What if I told you that one of the most influential figures in human history lived for over 30 years, and yet we only know details about a few of them? No diary, no letters, no first-hand biography, just fragments. This is the story of how little we actually know about Jesus of Nazareth, and why that should surprise us. Jesus Christ stands at the very center of Christianity. Billions worship him. Entire civilizations were shaped around his name, and yet, when we open the Bible, something strange happens. Out of a life believed to span 3 decades or more, the Gospels focus almost entirely on one short period, roughly the last 2 to 3 years. His childhood, almost silent. His teenage years, missing. His 20s, completely absent. For someone described as wise even from a young age, someone who challenged religious authorities and inspired massive movements, this silence is astonishing. So what does the Bible actually contain? We get a brief birth narrative and one single childhood episode at the temple. Then, nothing, until Jesus appears as an adult preacher. There's no education history, no work life, no record of his beliefs forming or how his ideas developed. For over 90% of his life, we are left guessing, and that raises a powerful question: why? Many believers assume this gap is intentional, a divine design, but historians and scholars offer another possibility. What if the missing years aren't sacred silence, but lost history? The earliest followers of Jesus did not leave behind a single unified account. Instead, there were many writings, many interpretations, and many disagreements about who Jesus was and what he taught. As the early church grew, it faced a problem. Different groups remembered Jesus very differently. Some emphasized moral reform, some strict monotheism, some social justice and humility. As church institutions formed, leaders began deciding which writings were acceptable, which teachings were dangerous, and which stories would be preserved, and which would vanish. Many early texts were rejected, destroyed, or labeled heretical. What survived shaped a new religious structure, one that may not fully reflect what Jesus himself believed. Some scholars argue that later generations attributed sayings to Jesus he may have never spoken and framed his message to support emerging doctrines. This wasn't necessarily out of malice, but out of a need for control, politics, and unity. In this view, Christianity didn't simply preserve Jesus' message, it reconstructed it. If most of Jesus' life is missing, and if his teachings passed through generations of editing and power struggles, then understanding Jesus becomes less about unquestioned belief and more about careful investigation. Jesus of Nazareth remains one of history's greatest mysteries, not because we know too much about him, but because we know so little. And maybe the most important question isn't who do people say Jesus was, but rather, what would his message look like if we had all of it?